Good start. In case anyone hasn't has had the misfortune of running across me before, I'm Helen. I'm a Fintech Marketing Consultant and Advisory Board Member at Fintech Marketing Hub. And I'm really pleased to have with me Rebecca Hackworth, who works at Tunes. So we're both kind of coming at this topic from a B2B background. Hopefully though, I think a lot of the principles that we talk about will be also applicable for B2C potentially as well. So we'll try and make time for questions at the end, but equally come and grab us afterwards if there's any burning issues. We're going to start, now this is Rebecca's idea, so you can blame her for this. We're going to start by asking the room a question. This is where we're going to check whether you're still paying attention. So, although we're talking about field marketing, we just want to ask a question about events. So, ignore this type of event where you're coming to talk about or hear about marketing. How many of you, hands up please, regularly go to industry events? So fintech or for the verticals that you operate. Nice and high with the hands so we can see them please. Okay, that's a good number. So keep your hands up if you do more than 2 to 5 of those events a year. Okay, great. More than 5? Oh, there's a drop. More than 10? Big drop. There's one lucky person, 2 lucky people in the room who get to go to more than 3.
Can you smile for a picture with your hands up, please? Thank you.
Brilliant, okay. Thank you for showing that you're still listening. Should we tell them why we asked them that?
Sure.
Especially goes why, Helen. So what we wanted to talk about initially was the role of events and how valuable that can be within this kind of building momentum. So we talked about how many marketers do we think go to some of the industry events to kind of take in what's happening in the industry. And you had some really interesting points around what's the value of the marketer going in the first place. So
right, so, as we all know, I mean, I'm sure so many of us are wearing so many different hats when it comes to marketing. We're at, pre-seed, Series A, Series B companies. I mean, some of you might be at larger firms where there's an events team that kind of handles this stuff. But what happens sometimes that I've experienced, and I'm sure many of you in the audience, is that they tend to, events can be expensive, and sometimes they will send, the events coordinator and a salesperson to that event, and you don't get a chance to be there and hear from the customer and from the horse's mouth what's actually happening on the ground.
That's a good point. So actually, back to the audience, how many of you go to these industry events and are not there to man the stand?
Yes.
Okay, a lot less.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we were thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so, these events are, super concentrated means of field marketing. And by field marketing, we're referring to, in real life, IRL marketing, so not digital. And it's sort of breaking down. I like what Andrew Davies said before, the CMO from Paddle, about this like false dichotomy between sort of demand gen and brand awareness. And when you're there, you're really building that building that funnel together actually, and you're seeing that sort of firsthand. And you're there and you're talking to customers. You're seeing what the competitors are doing as well. You're seeing how our salespeople are representing your brand, how they're describing our products. You're listening to pain points. And sometimes too, it's not just about like, okay, your prospect has a problem and, they're talking to, the sales guy for a solution to that problem. A lot of times, what I've seen in the fintech space is, oh, hey, we've worked together, 2 years ago, I do X, Y, and Z, you do these things. What synergies could we do together? What could we create together as sort of a joint venture, partnership, or something like that? So you see some of these things on the ground, and that's really important from a marketing standpoint, because it informs what you're writing about. It informs your content moving forward, and it informs too you get a better idea if the event was successful, and whether you want to repeat it in the next year and put that spend in your budget.
Yeah, so there's an awful lot to be gained from sending the people in this room and their teams to these industry events, because as you say, there's you get to have well, first of all, how many of you in here think that their sales team go out and have conversations and are on message? There we go.
Right, but that could be, maybe some of our messages are wrong. Maybe we've been sitting in our ivory towers, in front of a computer screen, and we're not really there and present amongst the customers where we need to be.
Absolutely.
And what better way to do that than to be and attend some of these events?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking about, I shared with you that I'm currently working with a payments orchestration business called Bridge. Went along and listened to sales conversations at 2 different events, and I learned more about customer pain points and what messages were working with that audience from those 2 mornings than I did from 2 months worth of kind of internal research and talking to people within the business, because you really hear it firsthand, and then it spurred some ideas, as you said, for content, but also what's resonating with those prospects.
Exactly.
And that first-hand input is extremely
key.
valuable.
And then too, because so many of us are wearing different hats, we're there for the PR and tweeting and twittering and and Xing now, is it? And of course, what are the themes on stage? What are people talking about? And there's PR and journalist opportunities too. So running your media, running your comms as well. So that's critical, as well as meeting other people in your field and growing your network. And as I've heard earlier in the day, our own careers are very important, and the bigger our own personal networks are, the more we can do for our companies. The more we can do for our companies, the more they succeed, we succeed. So we really have to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why we talked about this in amongst sort of momentum building conversation is, I think from what Rebecca's just said there, you can hear we're talking about, sorry, I'm having a bit of a microphone issue today. We're talking about events, PR, social media, content. There's a lot of different facets here, and that's just around events. And of course, that's what feeds into momentum building. So if we're thinking about how you've got all these multiple channels, and you want to kind of build that brand presence, awareness, drive growth, whatever your objectives are, what are those principles that we kind of need to work with that will help start building momentum? How do you choose what tactics to go after? Where do you start with putting that together?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. I think too, there's a lot of noise. Some of these conferences and industries are incredibly noisy. From a PR standpoint, you might say, okay, let's do a partnership announcement there, at this event, and we'll get media attention. That's just not cutting it anymore. I mean, these things are a dime a dozen, and so it's like, well, what interesting thing can you kind of get out there ahead of time? What thought leadership, what expertise can you drive? And so, a lot of that is just thinking about, well, how do you drive people to your booth? And some of that is around getting in the mind of your buyers, of your prospects. And they're incredibly busy. They're just like us. They're on Slack, they're on Teams, they're on, WhatsApp, LinkedIn messages. They have kids, they're picking people up. It's just, there's so much noise out there. So in terms of how do you cut through that, usually I find that successful thought leadership can resonate for a few things. And one of that is fear of missing out. So, what are you bringing them that maybe that they're not doing that they should be doing? What are their competitors are doing? So usually a bit of benchmark research is really good for that. The other thing is that what amazing sort of future opportunity is there that their business is missing out on, and that kind of, it's also a bit of FOMO, but what else is happening in the world that, be it blockchain, be it, DLT, be it AI, what's going on there that they're not, that they'll be passed by if they don't do it. The other thing is that, a new efficiency or cost, something numerically related with a cost benefit figure. Is there, a headline that you can put out? Well, if, the cost per dollar investment in this will save them X amount. Oh, wow, if I implement this at my firm, then, we'll be able to do X, Y, and Z, or, we'll be much more effective. And then the last thing I would say is like what emerging risk is out there, what's happening that's that really could be a detriment to my business that we need to look at and manage now and filter that up to Exco, to top management, and need to invest in. So those kind of themes, if you develop some good thought leadership around that and then put it into the right channel mix ahead of time, your salespeople, you'll attract some attention to your booth. Your salespeople, they're happy to talk about that. They have something new. It's not just like, hey, this is what we do, this is our product. They actually have something there. It's very tactical, it's very practical, and it's just then about, getting it into the right mix.
So there's quite a process, and I suppose this is a process that is familiar to all of us who deal with any kind of marketing strategy, which is make sure you understand your audience, what they care about,
Right.
Start with what those pain points, the buying drivers, where are they, how do they want to receive their information, but even to do that just for the smallest things, even if it's just one small event where you're sending somebody and you need to make sure that they engage with the right people, wherever possible, I don't want to say milk it, but milk it for everything you can by joining up as many touch points and planning in advance rather than buy someone a ticket, send them, hope for the best, and then shrug your shoulders if nothing happens.
Yeah, it's absolutely, a holistic sort of journey. So you go and, before your salespeople go, you'll do, a screen scraping of the event app, see who's going, figure out what targets you want them to attend or to meet with. Then of course you give them some LinkedIn banners. Hi, I'm going to such and such event. I'll be there. I'll see you there. Get your calendar or whatever invites sorted. And then, schedule in your social posts as well while you're there. You have photos. You might do an event coinciding with the event, like an offsite with some special clients or partners or something like that. So it's this continual activity. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, you send the thank you emails, you do recaps, and you don't kind of let that just die right then and there. And then you do an assessment. Well, okay, was this successful? Did we get, did we get it right? Did we have the right messages there? Did we get the right number of meetings in place? What do we do better next time? Was the booth set up beautifully? Was the brand right? It's those sorts of things. Very tactical.
Yeah, absolutely. So as well as trying to bring in whether it's an event as the anchor for that activity or something else like a content campaign or something else. Bringing in all those different touch points, different formats, the consistency of message, as you say, across those different formats, and making sure there's plenty to work with is kind of the key. So I think we actually wrote a bit of a formula, which was something like, see if I can remember it, consistency, persistency, agility, and good input is what gives you momentum.
Yeah.
So I think as you then take this forward, if you're thinking about kind of smaller companies where maybe they don't have huge budgets to work with, maybe you need to kind of get every ounce out of your budget, what are the kinds of things that potentially might work there?
gosh, in terms of smaller events, I think it's just getting the basics right, looking at choosing the right events to be at, first of all. You don't need to be at every single event. Events might be a significant part of your budget if you look at it. So then, okay, where are leads going to be? Where do I absolutely have to be at? And then just sort of, I think, working backwards from there, what kind of booth size is appropriate for us?
Yeah.
How many people do we want to send? How many marketing people do we want to send? Hopefully,
All of them.
all of them. Yeah, and then getting into place a few things to move it, making sure that you have your social posts. Social, is cheap and cheerful. At least you have that. Getting your salespeople to do the outreach ahead of time, setting up those meetings ahead of time so you're not there with nothing to do. And of course, reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things we talked about in preparation for this was having a think about upfront what do you actually want to achieve from being there in the first place, maybe setting some KPIs.
Right.
And then looking back afterwards, measuring against those KPIs. How did it fare? Good, bad, indifferent? What was the reasons for that? And then, if anyone here has ever exhibited at Money 2020, for instance, there's a bit of a habit that once you've kind of remortgaged your life to actually take a stand there,
Yes.
You then kind of somehow get pushed into doing it again the next year automatically, right?
Yes.
So then, you need to bleed another arm to pay for it the following year, and then people get caught in this cycle of, can you tell I'm not a fan? You get caught in this cycle of kind of being there because you feel you have to, or being there because we did it before.
Right.
But actually we need to be a bit smarter and stop and say, does this deliver us what we need to get for the business at this point in time? Right. Let's only do it if the answer is yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I mean, I think Money 2020 is a tough one because there's a perception issue there too. Like the bigger your booth, the way you look. And, I've heard some salespeople say, well, they judge your company based on how your booth looks and how big you are. They see how solvent, they think it's a sign of how solvent you are, how much funding you have. It's a really important message that you're sending.
And maybe that's true
to people.
But somebody's got to break that perception at some point.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And maybe, it's the time to say, well, maybe we won't do all 3 Money 20, or we'll just do Europe, or we'll just do, whatever region is going to be key.
So I think the key is, or what I've taken from that, apart from we've got to get off the stage, is pick the right things, put in the right input, do them really well. So do a few things really well and really holistically with all your touch points, rather than try and spread yourself too thin.
Yeah,
do too many things.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
And go to those events.
And make sure, so now Rebecca's actually got a whole written list of why marketers should go to industry events. So I'm just volunteering her to send that list out afterwards. And you can use it to persuade your budget holders to let you go. Although maybe not to Money 2020.
Yeah, maybe not to Money 2020.
Thank you so much for joining me. Are there any questions from the audience at the moment? Yeah.
I've got 2.
Just do 2 quickly.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, are there any tips or tricks you have to really get that buy-in from your sales guys, not to promote out sales guys, but things that you can really give them.
You can if you like.
But things that you really give them, that you almost trick them into meaning that you're giving them something really powerful to kind of encourage them around events. Because I've definitely written messages to them on social, blah blah, and all this other stuff we can arm with as marketers that doesn't get used. So I was wondering if you had any tips and tricks.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So are you giving them banners and things like that to use? So, I think I'm going to be there, invites, that kind of thing. Ultimately, it's up to them. Some of them might be reaching out to people in their personal networks, so they're not putting it up in a public way. But what's your...
I just asked them, why didn't you use it?
Yeah.
If you, preferably only if they're friendly, if they're likely to get, quite cross with you, maybe not. But sometimes there's a good reason. So you might write, whether it's a sales sequence or, you made a point earlier about what if the messages are wrong. You're giving them stuff, they're not using it, maybe the messages are wrong. Like, let's not assume that just because we've written something we think is good, that it's actually what they need. And sometimes that's about content, message, sometimes it's format. So just understanding how do they have what is that sales journey? How are the interactions? What do they need to support the interactions? Let's not assume it's a sales deck or a one-pager or whatever. Let's just say, like, how does this work? What do you think is the right thing to send to them, or what people said they want from you? So I guess what I'm saying is try to keep the lines of communication open. By all means, keep giving them stuff, but keep questioning whether it's the right thing. And if they just go, oh, I forgot, or whatever, then likelihood it's just a useless salesperson.
We'll go on to one more question from this gentleman here.
Yeah.
Hello. So with fintech companies, do you have any formula for deciding what industry events you go to? Because you see, for example, a payments company may be selling travel and a couple of other sectors, but they will always prefer to prioritize fintech events than the industries that they sell. Do you have any other formulas to go about that? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. In terms of formulas, I mean, there's certain, it depends who you're selling to. So the company I'm working for now, we always go to Money 2020, we go to Cybus, we go to a couple really big, expensive events. But then we have but then regionally, within that, there are certain regions that have important events too. So, there's the Seamless events, there's Fintech Meetup in the States, there's Web Summit, there's a huge number of them. And then those are typically, I'm in payments, and a lot of what we're selling to are, other PSPs and banks. And we're going to those events where other, major financial institutions are at. There's a smaller part of the budget that we designate for more industry-specific events for, airlines or for, for manufacturing or for retail or something like that. But that tends to be, more. That sort of ICP is a little bit different. So it really depends. And then what you can do too to evaluate if the event is appropriate or not is to maybe send 2 or 3 people to scope it out and get individual tickets where you're not committing for a booth or a massive spend, and you have sort of an exploratory spend every year, and you do that, and your new business team sort of comes up with, oh, okay, this might be cool, and then they go and they say, actually it's a waste of time, and we spoke to some people and it's really not a good fit for us in our sector, and we need to pivot a little bit, so we won't do that in the future. Does that help?
I think the only thing I'd add to that is most events will have some sort of pack that they'll send out which has an audience breakdown. Ask them for their list from the previous year.
Yeah.
What they'll likely send you is something anonymised, so you'll have job titles and companies. For me, a quick scan down that, or send it to the sales team to scan down, probably tells you what you need to know. So, one more. There's one more.
One more question. I think, okay. The very last.
Last one, sorry. Yeah.
Quick question. You mentioned pre-event app attendee scraping. Whose responsibility should it be? Should it be with sales development or should it be marketing team?
I mean, it depends how your company is organized. I've seen it in different parts of the organization. It could be a demand gen function where somebody on the demand gen team outsources somebody to scrape that and then gives it to the sales team to kind of look at and look through that list and then do it. Or it could be somebody in marketing, or a role that sort of sits between sales and marketing, maybe somebody who kind of helps allocate leads or something like that, an SDR, so it just depends.
Just watch your GDPR. So that's
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's go over to the next session. Is that
Yeah.
okay? Yeah? Thank you.